everyone. Welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in for the 4 o'clock show. We have a full one with you here. We're going to kick off with Karl Wadensten, CEO of VIBCO and former political candidate. Thank you for coming in today.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate your taking the time to come downtown here in Providence because I know you're a busy guy. But one of the things I want to talk about after the election season this year, GoLocal wrote a couple pieces breaking down the election and political landscape here in Rhode Island. And one of the questions that we asked first was, what's the future of the RI GOP? Now, you have some unique insights into that as well as we're going to talk about the broader structure of leadership in Rhode Island. Let's start just at that GOP level with what we saw with this last election session.
So, Kate, you know I've told you that I'm not a political analyst. I'm not a political operative. But I do have some just street insight to this. So what happened was that the GOP had their clock cleaned, basically, in layman's terms. But it's not a bad thing and it's not a good thing. But the thing that I see from the layman's terms, it's a defining moment for them. It's a time for them to reflect on what do we want to be, right? And with that, what do we want to be? When everybody has a defining moment, and I kind of look at this from the business perspective. And politics, everybody says politics really isn't business, but it's still a process that I look at as a business. So if it was a business and we had a launch of a product and we had a launch and we're going to do something and we just kind of missed the target totally, it's a time to reflect and look at what did we miss? And I think what they missed is maybe the voice of the customer.
Okay.
And the customer being the voters of Rhode Island. What are the voters of Rhode Island looking for? Wouldn't you think?
Do you think it got kind of mired in the inter-party politics, the sort of jostling for who was going to be in top tickets? It's a small party, relatively speaking, here in the state. How do they move past that? I mean, as you said, does it have to really turn the corner and focus on the voter?
Yeah, so the defining moment is really a point that our organization went through this 18 years ago. That things happened, we had all these thoughts that we were all this, we were all that, and all of a sudden we find out we're not all that, and we're not all this. So at that point, we had to say to ourselves, who are we? Who are we serving? And what are the gaps between that? So, as I look at it, the RI GOP really needs to go through a cultural change of what are they doing? What does it look like in Rhode Island? Because Rhode Island's so small, Kate, that a lot of the U.S. really doesn't care about Rhode Island, but Rhode Islanders deeply care about Rhode Island. And we deeply care about our politics too, no matter which side of the fence you're on. So it's a point that I'd think that the culture and the purpose and the mission of the GOP, they got to really look strong at it.
And as you said, you made a good point of Rhode Island versus the rest of the country. Obviously, it's a unique situation that Republicans find themselves in around the country with a very unique president. And that seemed to overshadow a lot of the discussion and debate throughout the political season. I mean, is it imperative that the RI GOP find their own identity part and parcel apart from the national party in and of itself?
Well, remember, Rhode Island was founded on We're the Lively Experiment. It's at the State House. You can read it above the State House when you sit on the back steps. And Rhode Island, just from the beginning of time, is its own anomaly and has its own uniqueness, its own quirkiness, its own likes and dislikes. And I don't think the RI GOP really hit the basis for what real Rhode Islanders were looking for. And I don't know if their message was cohesive enough, because as a small group, that means all your pieces have to mesh very, very tightly and to get a big machine going, right?
And there clearly was obviously some inter-party issues, obviously through the primary, trickled down from the gubernatorial. There were many down-ticket races that saw primaries, but of course the gubernatorial one. Speaking of gubernatorial, obviously this current governor is term limited and we're going to see another election in 2022. Is there no better time than now? Because again, you'll have that open playing field without an incumbent to really kind of hit the reset button.
Yeah, and as you rebuild a culture, are you going to rebuild it big, or are you going to take it from the fundamentals and have a realization that the ROGIP has some real basic issues that they need to address, and they need to have an emotional connection from all the people that are part of this, have a cohesive voice and direction. And I didn't see some of those pieces happening there. I saw a lot of fragmentation. So to go for the 2020, no, it's the 2022 election, boy, you better start working really, really, really hard right now. And it's not saying that it's insurmountable, but you got to get together and you better start looking at what Rhode Islanders want. And is it something that gels with the RIGOP in the direction that they want to go?
So you had tossed your hat in the ring. Let's ask you while we have you on the show here, potential to get back in the arena.
No, I think my 4-day foray. 4-day foray, thank you. My 4-day foray was enough. I think that I have a lot more fun on the outside doing what I do. I have a lot of liberties with the current administration to help work on things. And I actually offered up to the RIGOP because my strong suit is cultural development and emotional connection. So I offered up that, you know, I'd be more than glad to work on, if they want to work on it and if they have the self-realization, who are we, what do we want to be when we grow up, and just take small steps. Because I look at building any kind of thing. Look at what you guys have gone through at GoLocal Prov. You guys started with a vision, but every day was just chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. So the RIGOP has to have that big vision, but how do we chip away daily? How do we get cohesion? And what do wins look like for us? Right? Does win look like the governor's seat? I don't know.
Or do you start lower with getting more, more players, more players
in the House, and more players in the House, more local players? Do you start just getting people to have dialogue that the RIGOP is an independent Republican look? It's not a national Republican look. Is that part of the party credo? I don't know, but that's for them to decide.
One of the things that we had talked about before you came on the show here too, obviously you're a leader in business, and when you talked about leadership just in general across the state, and the focus and the emphasis on these, the elected titles and the elected officials.
Yeah.
But you've always been a strong proponent that what's going to make Rhode Island stronger is not necessarily elected leaders, but leaders in every facet of the community, of business, of arts. That's what's really going to take the state to that next step and get us moving forward.
Right. And I think what I was alluding to, Kate, was that if you have that in your DNA and you have a vision, you have a passion, is that you don't need a title, you don't need a badge, you don't need a license to lead others. You know, if you can get emotional connection and make some real change, whether it's feeding hungry people, whether it's homeless people, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's beautification for downtown Providence, whether it's taking care of old people, whether it's just mentoring young people, whatever it is everybody has the personal power to start a movement. And then I kind of roll that back to say that during this political season, we had a lot of great people come out to put themselves in front of the Rhode Island public, and a lot of those people, their wishes and dreams didn't come through, so they weren't elected. But that doesn't mean that that's a stopping point. Like, what are they going to do now to define themselves? It would be really interesting. You talked about the governor. There's no re-election point. She has 4 years, and I hope that the governor takes this to really define what her 8 years here is in Rhode Island. And you had a bunch of other gubernatorial candidates, Alan Fung, you had Joe Trillo, you had Patricia Morgan, you had Giovanni Friccione, you had some people from the moderate party. It was, we'll think of the name in a minute. We'll have to type it in. Sorry about that, because he was a very good speaker. But what are they going to do now to define Rhode Island? And I'm not taking anything. They were all passionate about Rhode Island in their own way. They were all extremely passionate about Rhode Island, but they couldn't get enough critical mass to get moving. But what are they going to do now to define Rhode Island?
I'll tell you, one of the things we're able to do here, Karl, is able to let folks, submit opinion pieces. And I've heard from a number of folks who ran, didn't get elected, but are still wanting to weigh in on the process, weigh in on democratic participation, wanting to have their voice heard. So you raised a good point. Just because there wasn't a win doesn't mean that these folks who, again, went into the arena, and kudos to those who decide to run for office, but can still make an impact here in the state moving forward. But wanted really you to come in and tell us your thoughts, again, having turned VIBCO around, as you said, 18 years ago. Right. Again, that sort of look at the Rhode Island GOP after this last election season.
And it was really hard work. Had it been the DNC, right? Had it been the Democratic Party, it would be the same, because I don't think any one of the parties are immune from what's happening now. Is a lot of fragmentation.
We see it on the
A
Democratic side.
lot of
with the
fragmentation.
Progressives and the more conservative side of the party. It's happening right up at the State House. There's a reform caucus that is looking to put some pressure on the speaker for a number of items in 2019. As we let you wrap up here, Karl, we have you in the studio. Let's talk a little bit about that 2019 look at the Assembly. You know, what did you see in the last couple of years that helped move the state, especially from a business standpoint, forward? Let's talk as a business owner. You know, what you want to see, you know, from the state to say, hey, this is how we can help business and the economy in Rhode Island.
Well, some of the things, and I sit on the Commerce Board, so some of the things are the innovation grants that we're giving. The innovation grants are critical to connect universities, other organizations to private sector businesses to kind of develop new innovation thinking. And we have, I think it's a few $1 million in that. We've given out, I think, $1.2 million or something. So don't quote me on the numbers, but it's been a lot of companies, and there's been some innovative things. So that's one good thing. And I've always been an advocate at Commerce Board. I've always been an advocate for manufacturing. And the governor and the rest of the board members know that when we have cranes in the sky in Providence, I'm always a hard sell on that. But what's going on now in downtown Providence is that vibrancy of young people, and we need this kind of thing, these kind of habitats for people, like the Wexford building that's going on right down the street here.
Wexford, what are your thoughts on fame?
Um,
Don't tell me
no.
you're going to plead the fifth being on
No, not at all, not at all. And I think if a private investor wants to come into the state and invest, you know what, Rhode Island, you better wake up and let somebody come in here, because it's not the first one, it's not the last one, but this could be the one that puts us as a catalyst to start that momentum, because we already have critical mass here. Design, I don't care about it. I've been all over the world and all over the US, and there's all kinds of crazy things with design, right? It's just whether it conforms to the building codes and the fundamental things. So, but I've been focusing more of my time at commerce, and that's kind of out of the bailiwick of commerce.
Yeah, it is, I know, but of course we'd like to ask folks when they're here in studio. So I appreciate your taking the time. I know you're a busy guy to come here.
Thank you.
To talk politics, business, and more. Karl Wadensten with VIBCO, thank you so much.
Thank you. Great.
I appreciate it.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with our next guest.
Beautiful. Thanks.